Darkness is calling.
Have you ever had that feeling where the hair on the back of your neck stands up and you just know you're not alone? That cold dread that washes over you when something just isn't right? Tonight, we're diving into 3 true stories from people who experienced that exact feeling. Tales that will make you double-check your locks and maybe leave a light on. These aren't just campfire stories. They happen to real people, just like you and me. So, dim the lights, get comfortable, and let's begin. Our first story comes from a user named Trailwalker88, a seasoned hiker who thought he'd seen it all in the sprawling national forests he frequented. He loved the solitude, the quiet rustle of leaves, and the feeling of being one with nature. But one autumn afternoon, that solitude turned into something far more sinister. He was deep into a trail he knew like the back of his hand, a good 10 miles from any road. The sun was starting to dip below the tree line, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. That's when he heard it. At first, it sounded like a child's laugh, a single, high-pitched giggle carried on the wind. He froze, listening. It was strange. Who would bring a small child this deep into the woods, this late in the day? He called out,
"Hello?
Hello? Is anyone there?" Only the wind answered. Shrugging it off as his imagination or a strange bird call, he continued on his path, wanting to make it back to his car before dark. But then he heard it again, closer this time. A distinct giggle.
What was
that? A chill that had nothing to do with the evening air crept down his spine. He started walking faster, his heart thumping against his ribs. The forest, once a place of comfort, now felt oppressive. The trees like silent, watching giants. He kept glancing over his shoulder, expecting to see a prankster or a lost family. He saw nothing but deepening shadows. The giggling, however, didn't stop. It seemed to dance around him, sometimes in front, sometimes behind, always just out of sight. It was playful, yet utterly terrifying in its context. He broke into a jog, his heavy hiking boots pounding the dirt path. The laughter seemed to keep pace, a phantom echo in the woods. He didn't stop running until he burst out of the trailhead, gasping for air in the fading light of the parking lot. His car was the only one there. As he fumbled for his keys, his hands shaking, he heard it one last time. A soft giggle right by his ear. He threw himself into the car, locked the doors, and sped away, not looking back. He never hiked that trail again. He says that to this day, he can't explain what happened. Was it a spirit? A trick of the mind? Whatever it was, it turned his sanctuary into a place of fear. Our second story is a different kind of unsettling. It comes from a woman named Clara, who worked the late shift as a caregiver for an elderly woman in a large, old house. The house itself was a character in this story, full of creaks and groans with long, shadowy hallways. Clara was used to old houses, but this one had a certain weight to it. The woman she cared for, Mrs. Gable, suffered from dementia and would often talk to people who weren't there. Clara was accustomed to this and would just gently guide the conversation back to reality. But one night, something shifted. Mrs. Gable was having a particularly lucid evening. They were watching an old black and white movie in the living room when Mrs. Gable suddenly muted the TV. She turned to Clara, her eyes wide and clear. "He's here again, you know," she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. Clara, assuming it was the dementia, asked, "Who's here, Mrs. Gable?"
Mrs. Gable?
The old woman pointed a shaky finger towards the dark, empty hallway that led to the back of the house. "The tall man," she said. "He just stands there, watching." Clara's heart skipped a beat. Usually, Mrs. Gable's hallucinations were of old friends or family members. The tall man was new, and the way she said it, with such genuine terror, was chilling. To humor her, Clara stood up and peered down the long, dark corridor. "There's no one there, see?" she said reassuringly. But as she turned back, Mrs. Gable was shaking her head, her face pale. "He's just hiding. He does that. He doesn't like when you look right at him." Clara tried to dismiss it, but the atmosphere in the house had become thick and heavy. For the rest of the night, she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Every creak of the floorboards made her jump. Later, as she was helping Mrs. Gable get ready for bed, the old woman grabbed her arm tightly. "Please," she begged, "don't let him come in my room tonight. He stands in the corner." Clara promised she wouldn't and left the bedroom door slightly ajar with the hallway light on. As she sat in the living room trying to read a book, a floorboard creaked loudly from the hallway. Not the usual settling creak of an old house. This was a heavy, deliberate sound, like a footstep. Clara froze, her ears straining. Silence. She told herself it was just the house, just her frayed nerves. But then, from Mrs. Gable's room, came a single, terrified scream. Clara rushed down the hall to find Mrs. Gable sitting bolt upright in bed, pointing at the corner of the room, her eyes wide with horror. The corner was empty, but the window, which Clara was certain she had locked, was wide open, the curtains fluttering in the night breeze. Nothing was ever stolen. Nothing was out of place except for that open window. Clara quit the next day. She couldn't shake the image of Mrs. Gable's terror or the bone-deep certainty that they hadn't been alone in that house. For our final story, we journey to a quiet, suburban neighborhood. This tale comes from a guy named Mark, who, at the time, was a teenager living with his parents. Their house had a motion-activated floodlight in the backyard, pointing towards a small patch of woods that bordered their property. It would often get set off by deer or raccoons, so no one thought much of it when it would flick on at night. One night, around 2 a.m., the light switched on. Mark, who was up late playing video games, glanced out his window. He didn't see an animal. Instead, he saw a figure standing perfectly still at the edge of the woods, just inside the pool of light. It looked like a person, but they were unnaturally motionless. Before he could get a good look, the light timed out and plunged the yard back into darkness. Mark felt a wave of unease. It was probably just a neighbor taking a weirdly late walk, he reasoned. He went back to his game. About 10 minutes later, the light flicked on again. He looked. The figure was still there, but it had moved. It was now standing a few feet closer, next to the family's swing set. And it was facing the house, standing completely, utterly still. Now Mark was genuinely scared. This wasn't normal. He crept out of his room and went to his parents' bedroom, waking his dad. He quietly explained what he saw. His dad, though groggy, was concerned. He grabbed a heavy flashlight and went to the back door, with Mark following close behind. The floodlight had turned off again. His dad opened the door and shined the powerful flashlight beam across the yard. The swing set was empty. The edge of the woods was clear. There was nothing there. "Probably just a trick of the light, son," his dad said, though he didn't sound entirely convinced. They locked the back door securely and went back to bed. Mark, however, couldn't sleep. He sat in his room, staring out the window into the dark yard. Hours passed. The sun was just beginning to rise, casting a gray glow over everything. Nothing else had happened. Mark was starting to feel a little foolish, thinking his tired mind had played tricks on him. He was about to finally go to sleep when his eyes caught something on the window of his room. It was on the outside of the glass, a perfect, greasy handprint. It was at the exact spot where he had been looking out, as if someone had been standing right there, palm pressed against the glass, looking in at him. The floodlight had never gone on. These stories remind us that sometimes the most frightening things are the ones we can't explain, the shadows at the edge of our vision, the sounds we can't identify, the feeling that we are not alone. What do you think happened in these stories? A prank? An overactive imagination? Or something else entirely? Let me know your theories in the comments below. Thank you so much for hanging out with me tonight and listening to these chilling tales. If you enjoyed this video and want to hear more true scary stories, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next one. Stay safe out there and always trust your instincts. See you in the next video.